Well, happy, beautiful, amazing day. Dr. Bob Rakowski here with this edition of the Dr. Bob Rakowski podcast. So, today I have the absolute joy of sharing this platform with Karen Virdi, a transformational guide, energy healer, and founder of Shine and Glow, a platform dedicated to helping women heal their inner pain and step into lives of meaning and joy. You know what? I wanted to read that word for word because I think it was so well stated. So, one, to be a transformational guide, I'm thinking you probably had to go through some type of transformation yourself. So, should we start there?
Absolutely. I want to take a moment to say thank you so much, Dr. Rakowski, for calling me into your vortex and letting me be a guest here. It means so much to me to be on your platform. So thank you first and foremost. And to answer your question, I will start off so that the listeners have an idea of who I am, what I've been through, and sort of where I am now. Back in 2011, Dr. Rakowski, I had experienced a collapse at home, and that was when I was 35 years old. And as a result of that physical collapse, which happened in my kitchen, which I collapsed at home again in my kitchen, suffered a concussion. That was sort of the starting point. I'm going to say this words like a rebirth to who I am today, or the steps to the rebirth of who I am today. And it was I want to say the catalyst to help me really shift my life and really understand what I was living by, what I was believing I was, what I believed of life, and just what I just felt in general. So, if I may, I'll walk the audience a little bit through what happened that day. I had started a new job as a human resource manager with a wonderful company here in Toronto, and very excited about this position. And I was still in my probationary period. And I came home in that probationary period one day and just said to my husband, I don't feel really well. And this was in March of 2011. And it was kind of unusual for me to say that because, I know emotionally I was a little here and there, but physically I just didn't feel well. It felt very different. And I remember that was March 15th. When I came home and said that to my husband. And then around 9 o'clock, I said to my husband, I'm going to go to bed. You'll have to put the kids to sleep. My kids were at the time 6 and 2. And I was just like really out of it, Dr. Rakowski. Like nothing felt connected within me. And all of a sudden, I just started throwing up and throwing up and throwing up all night from that time. And I just assumed, okay, maybe I had spinach salad for lunch. Maybe there was something in there, you know, trying to figure out what it could be. And the more and more that I was throwing up, the more and more I was trying to figure out what it was, eventually getting to a place where I was really fatigued, really tired, and not as coherent, very dehydrated, to say the least, and just not really plugged in. But I didn't realize that that was my body really saying to me, slow down and stop now. Because up until then, when I did a lot of my hindsight self introspection, I realized I was operating very much in a sort of lack, fearful, worry energy. And that was really affecting myself up to then. And there was a lot of unhealed trauma that I had carried as a child. So going back to that moment, as I kept throwing up all night, um, around 6 o'clock in the morning, I remember getting up on March 16th, and my body was screaming, water, 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 right? Hydration, hydration, hydration. And I, I've always, at that point, I was always like, no, I'm a strong woman. I'm going to get through this, power through it. I'm in a probationary period, and I don't want my employer to think I'm lying. All those little things we think about. And I got up and I started walking down the stairs to get water because I thought, okay, I'll rinse my mouth, have some water, come up, take a shower, and reset. Off I go back to work. As I'm walking down the stairs, my husband said to me, don't go downstairs. I'll get you your water. And I said, well, no, that's okay. Like I can do it because I felt bad that was with the kids at night and then helping me get through the night as well, too, getting up every time I was throwing up as well. So I went downstairs, even though I could feel my body saying, don't. I still went. And I went down to get some water. I placed it on my kitchen counter. And all of a sudden, I grabbed onto my kitchen counter and I said to myself, why is the room spinning? And from there, I just fell back, collapsed, lost all consciousness at that moment, hit my head really hard on my kitchen tiles. And thank God my husband was home and he's very alert to sounds. So he ran downstairs, he found me, and he said that when he found me, I wasn't breathing. He thought he was like shaking me. I was very pale. My eyes were rolled back. My teeth were clenched. He thought that I had passed. So, and I didn't see my life flash in front of me. For anybody who's listening, I just saw a lot of darkness. And he called 911. And with the grace of God, I started awakening, coming back, I guess, into my body. I don't know. And I couldn't see properly because the impact to my head. And all I just saw was very like little silhouettes of people grabbing me, holding me, putting me on something. That was the paramedics, of course. And I can see to my right my children and my husband standing there, and I could see their silhouettes. So I knew that that was them. So I go into the ambulance, Dr. Rakowski, and I have this massive pain in the back of my head where I fell. I had no idea what happened because I thought I was in a dream. And I was just claustrophobic, sitting in the back of the ambulance going, what just happened to my life? What happened? Why am I in so much pain? It felt like a 2x4 hit the back of my head. And I eventually got to the hospital. My husband got there too, did quick scans on me. And they said, oh, you have suffered a concussion and there's some blood here. It hasn't come out. Essentially, we're going to keep you in just to make sure you don't, I think they said clot at the time. And there was some hemorrhaging as well. Okay. That part I didn't know until later. So fast forward, I'm in the hospital for a few days. My husband reaches out to my employer and says, well, this is what's happened. The doctor that comes in and says, okay, well, you've got blood here. It looks like it's not spreading. We're going to send you home in a few days. Okay. So, but don't go to work for 3 weeks. No problem. So I really want people to listen to this story because there's a lot of golden nuggets to this. So I end up staying home for 3 weeks. But honestly, Dr. Rakowski, I was not settled in those 3 weeks, not just because of the physical pain. I had so much fear that if I don't show up and work and obviously get a paycheck and show up in that vibration that I think that made me feel so powerful and competent, that I'd lose my house or something would terribly go wrong because I'm not working and we're just relying on one income. So a lot of my fears started popping up, and I didn't give myself the opportunity to rest enough because that concussion and that hitting on my head was like God saying, you're not listening. You're not listening, right? You're too much in your headspace. So I pushed myself to go, and I remember getting up after 3 weeks and driving back to that office, crying all the way there. Something didn't feel right, feeling very dizzy. I probably shouldn't have been driving, but I did because I was scared not to be in that role. And then when I got there, I sat behind the laptop. I tried to type, and I remember just crying. And it was not very, as we would say, professional, but it's just what my body felt I had to do at the time. And I went to the manager's office and I said, the owner's office, I said, I can't be here. I can't explain it, but I'm not feeling well. So clearly my body needed more healing. And this was like God saying, wait, you need more time with this. You can't rush back. And I was always rushing, rushing, rushing. So I left, and then I got a note from my doctor, and, she said, okay, you need to stay home. I ended up staying home 6 months, a year, etc. And the more I stayed home, Dr. Rakowski, the more I started to understand that while this was such a painful thing, and I was so stressed and anxious and fearful of it because I was so scared that if I change my life, how is that going to be reflecting to my children and my husband? And will I be okay? Because that's all I've known is to be who I was up until then. And I tried to keep pushing myself. I didn't go back to that office, but I kept pushing for interviews, trying to get back out there. And every time I'd get to a point, and this is where I know, again, I want the listeners to really hear this, that there's something divine working through our pain. Every time I would go and apply, and I was even offered a job on the spot, it's like the next day, sorry, we don't have that role anymore. And I was like, something's happening here. Where am I going with this? Because I usually would get a job like this on the spot. So what's happening? Something is working. That curiosity kept building again. And I've always believed in a higher power, but I really started to see, Dr. Rakowski, the evidence of it through this collapse. So for about 2 years after my collapse from like 2011 to 2013, I was very angry, very anxious. I was in survival mode, a very dysregulated nervous system. Brain was still healing, and I'm trying to power through life, take care of my kids, do everything I'm supposed to as a daughter, daughter-in-law, wife, mother, sister, etc., all the different roles and hats that we have. And I started to realize I can't go back to where I was before. It's like this knowing in me. And I followed it. And I was very type A back then. I like what I felt, and I wasn't going to deter from it. But it's like something higher was saying, no, you got to look at this differently. So I started to trust it. And then I remember in 2013, after so much resistance, so much crying, so much being angry at God, at life, at the people that hurt me, blaming everything. I remember this feeling when I just started to, it felt like I come back home to myself. I was standing, I have a raised room just behind me that has a balcony and double doors. And I was standing up in that raised room, and this energy just came right through me, Dr. Rakowski. And it's like I gave it permission to come through me, and it swirled through me. And the message I got was, and it was very warm and loving, like I had been enveloped in love for the first time, it felt. It said, you're going to be okay. So something very mystical was happening in that moment. And as I was um, allowing that energy to move through me, I never felt this kind of peace and assurance ever up until then. And it made me slow down, and it made me look at my life. It made me look at this collapse and think, where did this come from? Did maybe my soul ask for this because I was not living in alignment? And from there, I knew I was onto something. I felt plugged in. And then in 2014, in that energy and knowing that something is birthing for me beautiful from this and changes, some sort of change is happening, but I don't know, I started to meditate. And that is something I never did before. How would I even know how to do that? Even though I believe we all have that awareness within us, I wasn't embodied in it enough. And I started meditating, and I started to discover a whole new world within me. And the way I looked at life started changing. And I started to break down my traumas, my beliefs, looking at what do I really believe about myself? What have I believed up until that collapse that created this? Why was I always anxious about life? Why was I always fearful? And the more I kept moving into those spaces that were bringing me back home, the more I learned and the more started coming in that was aligned. And from here, then my mission came through, the coaching came through, the energy work kind of landed in my lap. And I don't believe I would be where I am today if I didn't experience that collapse and I chose to look at it very differently. And even while I was in the hospital, Dr. Rakowski, when I was about to get blood work, this voice in me said, if the lobotomist can't find something or a reason why you should have collapsed, this is from something higher. Where did that voice come from? At a time where I was at my rock bottom, it felt. So something was working through me. And I kept remembering those little moments that felt like they were coming from somewhere very supportive, somewhere higher. So from there, that's when I started to understand this is the work that I need to pay forward, because I've always felt as a child that I was meant to do this kind of work, but it landed this way through my collapse. And that's where I'm going to say my life began. Yeah. That's a lot.
Well, there certainly is. So now I'm guessing that now they are on the backside of it. You recognize that everything has a purpose, and the purpose can be for our highest good and even to pay forward to the world. But what about people that haven't had that realization yet? They realize they've gone through a lot of emotional trauma and they're paying a physical price, whether it's exhaustion or anxiety or depression or a whole variety of illnesses. Where do you start with people like this? And by the way, you specifically work with women, which, by
Yes.
the way, that's who you're most qualified to help, but I'm guessing men could be helped by the same process. But where do you start? If they haven't identified the connection between emotional trauma and where they're currently suffering.
That's a good question. I think the best place to start is to ask yourself, and this is where you got to really pull back and say to yourself, why do I have to keep feeling like this? Because obviously there's some sort of energy and frequency and norm that they're feeling that doesn't feel good. Why do I have to keep feeling this? And the more you start from that place, the more you can get answers and start to take action towards your health, to receive that help from the community, the mentor, whomever it is that you need. But it's really being able to sit down and say, I don't like the way, if I know and understand that I don't like the way that I'm feeling, then I've got to do something about it. And that would be the first step.
I always like it, right? We need to take an inventory. We need to be honest with ourselves, sometimes painfully honest.
You do.
All right. So they've taken that inventory. So we have a number of tools that you help people move forward. Walk us through one or two, or maybe start with your favorite. What's your favorite way once they've taken that inventory to move them to a step towards self empowerment?
The first step is I say to the majority of the people I work with, you know, do you really want this? Like, do you want this? And you have to agree to it. Right. And when I do my life coaching sessions, my soul empowerment life coaching sessions, I'll get them to sign a declaration and get some verbal consent. Like, this is what you want to do. And you're holding yourself now accountable for this, because that's what I did for my collapse. Because I know very well, Dr. Rakowski, I could have at that point, because I was so stressed out from my childhood up until then, and all the pain that I had experienced, and so much that had happened in 5 years after the collapse, I could have checked out at that time. But I said, I cannot do that because my relationship with myself is important, and I have two young kids that need my help. So, having said that, some of the tools that I use in my coaching, my soul empowerment coaching, is we look at the belief work. That's the place I love to start because that's what I'm familiar with myself. Breaking it down, understanding how to work with the subconscious mind, how to rewire yourself using the physiology and anatomy that God gave us, and to start changing your life. And then we work through the body, we look at forgiveness, we work through the heart, and we look at the soul level and see, well, how would your soul why would your soul want this from you? So it's a lot of layers, but it's all connected to each other. Or we start with energy healing work where we look at the energy of the body and see which areas feel like the life force is not flowing. Where do you feel trapped? What's the messages of the body? And that comes very easy for me for the most part. So I'm able to sort of help and guide the best I can in that space.
We've known for centuries, it's been taught for centuries that energy goes where you direct it. Um, I listened to a very clever podcaster a while back, and he described belief systems with just the letters BS. He said most people's belief systems are BS for what that acronym means. So, how do you get them from these disempowering belief systems to see actually that maybe the potential benefit or path in it to an empowering belief system? What's your favorite tool for that?
Favorite tool is I always tell them, because most of the people that come to me, they'll say to me, why would God do this to me? I was just working with somebody in Norway and she was like, why would God do this to me? Why is God punishing me? From there, it's kind of different for everybody. From this perspective, it would be, well, what's made you come to get help after years of suffering? There's something in you that's guided you, that's underneath all that pain, the layers of that pain. That is your higher self. That is some source working through you. It doesn't matter what you call it, source, Buddha, Jesus, God, creator, universe. That thing, that divine invisible intelligence is rooting for you. That's why it's pushing you to get help. So that is proof you are being seen. Now you got to do the work. And this is where myself or whoever else they choose to work with come in, and we have to break down those walls and bring back that faith. So the first step is, again, plugging in with that source again. And that's what I did, even though I was angry. And you're allowed to be angry. But I plugged back in there, and that's where everything started coming through. And it's been an ongoing process. It wasn't just an overnight thing. I did a lot of work to get here, right?
Well, anger can certainly be empowering and it's just energy, right? So what are we doing with that energy? I'm reminded of a cartoon when I was a kid. Ziggy was praying on the side of the mountain, and someone said, "Well, what would you like to ask God?" And he said, I'd like to ask him why he allows so much pain and suffering in the world when he could do something about it."
Yeah.
And in the next frame, he says, "Well, why didn't you ask him that?" He says, "Well, I'm afraid he'd ask me the same question." Commercial break, very quick. BetterCoffeeShop.com, the world's cleanest, best organic coffee. By the way, if your body's out of balance, if your mind is out of balance, if your spirit is out of balance, the herb within that, Ganoderma lucidum, is called the herb of spiritual potency. Over 3,000 published studies. Definitely something that can get your body better fast. BetterCoffeeShop.com. So let's say that we have someone listening right now and they feel stuck, overwhelmed, disconnected. What's one simple step that they could do right now or almost now to start shifting how they perceive the world and how they move through it?
Best thing is to focus on your health. Whether you start walking more, whether you stretch, move your body, because all that stress that is accumulated in the emotion of anger, resentment, guilt, shame, frustration, grief, that is just energy that needs to move out. And when we're not feeling good, it's because it's been trapped in our body and our system, and our body through that pain is saying, out you go, out you go. It needs to be released. So, for anybody listening, don't be ashamed of what you feel. We all feel it. It's just understanding how to move through it with grace and reverence and accepting it as sort of a mission and working through it. But move your body, because from there, as you move, you're releasing, and you're naturally, through the laws of the universe, you're allowing something to come in. After that, your next step might be you want to join a community of wellness. After that, your next step might be, oh, I want to get certified for this. All the steps will just align, but you start with your health first, right? And move your body in some way and let that open up the next steps.
Well, I love how you said that. And so, a Harvard psychologist that was talking about health and happiness. And he says very, very simply, it's easier to act yourself into a way of feeling than to feel yourself into a way of acting. So when you start moving, everything gets better. Now we know that specifically muscles may be the largest message source in our body, and we could call it even an endocrine organ. There's over 300 what are known as myokines and maybe as many as 700. One is called brain derived neurotrophic factor. You move the body, especially intensely, you start nourishing the brain. John Rattay wrote a book called Spark. He said movement is like a little bit of Prozac and a little bit of Ritalin. So antidepressant as well as good focus. But then you talked about joining a community,
Yeah.
which, man is a social animal. So do you have an online, maybe Facebook community for these people where you're all working in the same direction? How are you building community?
So right now it is through Instagram mainly and TikTok. But next year, 2026, I will be launching my podcast. So that will bring more community there as well. And also different services that will have a mission, but also community with it as well, to a place where we can always turn back to ourselves in groups, which I've had before as well in an academy that I launched. But I'm revisiting that and seeing what I need to offer next year for everybody. And that would be a great place to start. And my handle is at Heal with Karen on Instagram.
Love it. So,
Yeah.
we start looking at this and, one of the things that moves people forward in life more than anything else is actually accountability. So, are you gonna build that within it as well? So community, I think of loving relationships, that's true, but how about everybody moving in the same direction? And it looks like physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, and why not even throw in social, financial, and impactful? So will there be an accountability or is there an accountability component built in?
100%, 100% there is. I mean, if you're saying it from the perspective of, myself showing up for this, absolutely. If you're saying it from the perspective of somebody wanting to join, accountability has to be part of it. Because for so many years, I find everybody I've worked with since 2016, we've been relying on some source outside of us. But when you start taking accountability, you're coming back home to you and you're trusting yourself after years of being disconnected and out of sync with yourself. And when you start plugging into yourself and building that accountability, you and I both know, Dr. Rakowski, that is where your life starts to change because you start to become more in the driver's seat and a strong co creator with life versus being a victim of your circumstances.
The ancient Stoics would talk about the two driving forces of change, pleasure and pain. And reality is pain is a lot stronger. And you found a way, and let's face it, everybody has dealt with some level of pain. I like the mindset that, God won't give us any more than we can handle. But as Mother Teresa said, I just wish she didn't have so much confidence in me. Uh, what about people that are feeling stuck like that right now? They go, okay, listen, I can understand people have had pain, but not like me. What words of wisdom do you have for them?
Um, don't believe your pain. Don't believe your pain. Yeah. Use your pain. And if you can agree to this and work with this little statement that I'm going to share every day, it'll self-actualize in some way. Use your pain as a way of something higher trying to bring in more light within you, bring you back to your source, bringing back you back to your soul resonance. Don't look at it from that physical space or you'll be trapped because that's how I was most of my life. Trapped by what people said about me, said to me, what I went through growing up. Don't, because you'll never live a life of freedom. You'll just be here and there, but you'll be like a shell walking around. We want you in life. God wants you in life. God wants you to maximize your potential in life. That's why we all have light in us. So that is my main message.
And it's an absolutely beautiful message. So
Yeah.
one more time, Heal with Karen is your handle. You're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, and they can reach out to you that way for coaching and guidance and inspiration.
100%. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And as we wrap up this beautiful day, I'm Dr. Bob Rakowski, absolutely knowing that we can all be happy, healthy, and successful. So keep in mind, whatever you've been through, we believe there's a divine purpose to it. Find it. And I know that Karen can help you resolve it and grow from it.
Yes, thank you so, so much. Such a joy to meet you and be on your platform. Thank you.